Good morning. We have another opportunity to talk with the friend of Özcan Çetin that will kill me to not saying good the name, but let's give him the opportunity to represent himself.
Mhm. Well, I don't mind if you pronounce my name wrongly, but you can call me Jan. All our friends can call me Jan. It's it's enough, fair enough, because my name is really difficult to be pronounced by non-Turkish speakers, so I totally understand. And so Jan is fine. And yeah, I'm happy to be with you again. Thank you for sharing your time with me, and it's I'm really happy to have opportunity to talk about social issues, political issues in our countries.
Yes, and it was an idea about talking about Basque Kurdish issues.
Hmm. Yeah. Since these two cases are pretty similar, even on one hand, they are very similar. On one hand, they have total differences. So it will be very interesting to talk about the two cases and make comparison between both. And yeah, let's enjoy.
For me, it's difficult knowing about the roots of the conflict in Kurdish people because it may take long talking about the Ottoman Empire, the Persian Empire, the transformation of those empires into what ended in 1998 in the end of the First World War. It has many curious things because in the Caucasus there are Armenians on one part, and there were in the Ottoman Empire, and in those years of the First World War, to make the alliance, the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire um, took realizes that the Kaiser is a descendant of Prophet Muhammad, so we can call jihad to war, get war to France and Great Britain. So what? It is against all history of Ottoman Empire, and inside the Ottoman Empire, it's the important role of the military in getting the French Revolution ideas to the country. So in Basque Country, we have problems with the French Revolution ideas because we have constitutionally right. Our democracy it's similar in conception what parliamentary view in Great Britain. We have a foral system who was partially destroyed in 19th century. So we're in Western Europe. Uh, Kurds are distributed in four states: Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. So the context is different, but it must. Every people has rights, and important thing is being there to try to be respected.
Like you say, Juan, Kurdish issue is quite interesting to and charming for researchers like me. And like you say, Kurds are divided in four countries officially. It's countries Turkey, Iran, Syria, and Iraq. But there are Kurds in South Caucasia, like Georgia and Armenia. So that could be the main difference between Kurdish and Basque issue. Basques also divided into two nations, France and Spain, but it's still Europe, right? But in case of Kurdish, it's more complicated. It's not easy like Basque issue. When we talk about South Caucasia, it's considered as Europe, right? And when it comes to Syria and Iraq, it's Middle East. So Kurdish issue is not it's intercontinental intercontinental problem as well. It's between the regions, and since it's very close to Europe, since Turkey is one of the officially candidate for the European Union, and on other hand, all we know what's going on in Syria, uh, one of the longest civil war in the history, and Iraq, and a very strategic country, Iran, and South Caucasia, close to Russia. It's very related to what's going on in Ukraine and East Europe
Mm.
nowadays. So it's multi-layer problem, unlike the Basque Country.
That's probably and history tells us one thing about what happened in 20th century. More or less in Europe, for the experience we had in First World War and Second World War, the national letter or national card was given in the process because inside the World War One, the Irish were a part of the what Germany gave some gifts to persuade the Irish to upset to give a revolution to get the British apart or at least part of their war efforts in the Irish conflict, the Eastern Rising in 1916 is part of this thing, and the Austro-Hungarians have for example, one point interesting. If you are official in the army of Austria-Hungary, Austro-Hungarian Empire, you have to learn the language of your soldiers. You have to know German, but if you are what nowadays is part of Ukraine, but it had another names in those days, they had to learn to speak with the soldiers in their own language. So that thing was used not in World War II in the Eastern Front. Was a problem for Germans if they had used this weapon to try to. They tried, but at the end of the war, trying to use the Ukrainians, the Baltics, but they didn't. But in the West, in Croatia, in Flanders, in other countries, the Germans tried to reuse the national letter. So it in the post-war era, with the European Union, with the construction of multilateral levels, not all the ideas could be implemented. So what still happens in Middle East, that a country can do whatever they want with the peoples inside the country, it is not possible to do in Western Europe. But it's because the evolution of the history, not if it would be possible, European countries, or at least European political parties, would like to make what is made in Syria with Kurds, or at least what happened sometime, because now it's possible to say that this autonomy, some kind of autonomy in Syria and Iraq, but what happens in Iran or in Turkey? For example, in the entrance of the United Kingdom to the European communities in 1972, they fulfilled a plan for dividing Northern Ireland in the parts where they were majority, Protestant majority, and the Catholic majorities, disengagement, and giving to the Republic of Ireland. Some kind of Bantustan. Do you know Bantustan in South Africa? Giving self-determination parts of the South Africa with niggers majority. That was planned in Europe, but Europe itself watched it, knew it, and said to Great Britain, "You are stupid. What are you going to do? Forget about it. Enter the community and respect democracy." Even that, Bloody Sunday was made in those days. So it is more the capability in the structures and in the context more than the wills of the players.
Like you say, Juan, the national, the French Revolution. Before I forget, French Revolution heavily affected the nationalist movements in Middle East as well as Europe. So you can say Kurds are impacted by this revolution, this nationalism, a wave of nationalism. That's true, but something we have to know about Kurds. Kurdish nationalism has started before French Revolution. In the 15th century, you can find poets and nationalist texts in Kurdish community against Georgians, against Turks, against Persians. So it was quite nationalist. So you can say Kurdish nationalism has started before French Revolution. And yeah, it's true that after French Revolution, in the Europe and Middle East, in Ottoman Empire, in all empires actually, the nations, the minorities, ask their right, ask self-determination, and Kurds was one of them, you can say. But as I told you in the previous stage, it's multi-layer problem. When it comes to, like, you were talking about Irish problem in the UK, and you mentioned Catholic and what was the other one? Other
Protestant people.
Protestants. So it's also multi-layer problem. It's not only about nationalism, but it's also about the religion. It's a little bit similar to Kurdish issue. If you see the map, the Turkey and Iranian border is one of the longest border in the history. It didn't change for like a couple of centuries or something like that, and it divided because of Kurds. Because in this period, Kurds took side of Ottomans, who are Sunni Muslims, against the Shia Muslim Iranians. Kurds themselves, majority of Kurds are Sunni. So it's not only nationalism but also the religion which affect decision of the Kurds in the region. And when it comes to like the rising stage of the Ottoman Empire, Kurds were one of the strongest nations, strongest minority in the empire. Most of generals, it's fair to say that most of generals and beys, which could be translated as lord into English, beys are the lord of the region, were Kurdish, and most of the fights in most of the jihad, like in Islamic literature, Ottoman Sultan asked Kurds to send the troops to the west. Today, you can find like when I was in Ukraine, it's quite interesting. Ukrainians were telling me they have some words derived from the Turkish. One of them was shalvar. It's also their traditional pants, male pants. But the thing is that shalvar is actually a Kurdish word. It derives from Kurdish to the Turkish, and from Turkish to the Ukrainian. So it's itself a proof that Kurdish troops once were fighting in Ukraine and probably in other part of the empire, other part of the world. I saw the same thing in North Africa. You can find many Kurdish origin words in North Africa, especially in Algeria. For locals, they are the Turkish words for sure, but it's actually Kurdish word. So Kurdish and Turkish communities are wholly engaged to each other. So what happened after the French Revolution? Why the Kurds asked independence? Actually, they didn't ask independence in the beginning. They asked a cooperation between Turks and Kurds. Until that period, still you cannot talk about nationalism. It's still religion. We are Muslims and we have to kick out the enemies, not only Kurds and Turks, but also Arabs and Albanians, also Bosnians, some of them, not all of them, but some of them, who are feeling more Muslim than the national identity. Uh, and then, after World War One, somehow Kurdish Republic of Turkey has been established with promise to give wide autonomy to Kurds and other minorities. But it's subject of another interview maybe. But the things change, and then founder of Republic of Turkey decide to build a nation state. It's in political science we call it nation building. For a nation state, you need a nation, and for a nation, you need symbols, language, and identity, religion, a flag, and this kind of things. So we have to explain that Kurdish nationalism starts from French Revolution, but in the first in post World War One era, Kurds still didn't want independence but cooperation. Then the things change, and Kurds come to a idea of being independent, and now we still have a Kurdish issue in the Middle East and East Europe, you can say.
It's very interesting because one thing is what you try and another is what you get. Because using only the last example of Irish issue, they tried in the 19th century to get a union in symbols, which is more important symbol than the flag. They tried to unite all Irish using the orange for Protestant people,
Yeah.
the green for the Catholic people, and the
Mhm.
white as peace and union. They got what? Struggle. Struggle because the British wanted to remain in Ireland, so Protestant people didn't feel represented by the flag. That issue is what Basques and Kurdish, every context, every nation has its ingredients, proper ingredients about history, culture, about administration that gets the way that is nowadays. Probably it is more proper the relation with Kurds and Turkey that Catalans and Spain than Basques, because Catalans wanted to change Spain to be more European country. The bourgeoisie, I don't know, it says so in English, the bourgeois class, I
Yeah.
don't know, that people wanted to make Spain more proper in the international context, and I think with the important minority of Kurds in Istanbul, I think they are today important. So the capital was not Ankara; it was Istanbul, European city. So it, one moment, I suppose people in Turkey wanted what in revolution, French Revolution was told: one administration, one language, one for all, and that clashes with the real country. Real country is plural, has many languages, has many peoples. So that virus made by the French Revolution gave very conflicts in very when France went in the final 19th century to Egypt, wanted part of the cake to be important in the world because they have problems in America, in Asia, in Africa, so they wanted to be important with the United Kingdom beside. But in going to the Middle East, engaged problems. In the middle 19th century, there was the conflict in Crimea, which is Ukraine. So Turkey was involved in a war against Russia with United Kingdom and France. Those issues takes from here to there, words, culture, gastronomy. So is there the engagement of peoples and behaviors. But the problem now is what the people of some elites want to remain on those ideas about uniformism and relativism. So what happens is reaction of peoples that want to preserve their behavior.
Like you say, after the World War One, things change, and we have another dynamic in the Middle East, all the world actually, uh, like foods, culture, and what we are calling soft power are the new battlefield for the nations. Not only arms, not only weapons, rockets, or nuclear power, but also the cultural power was one of the main dynamic. So in this part of the world, not only Kurds and Turks, but also Armenians, Arabs, and Greeks are clashing on the food. Uh, it's very interesting as a Basque who grew up in Spain. It could be very interesting for you. You will not even believe that. But Turks and Greeks, for example, are fighting on one food, which called cacık in Turkish, but cacık is in Greek language. It's pretty easy. It's quite simple food, yogurt and cucumber. That's all. But Greeks are like it's our national food, and Turks are no our national food. So you can see how the things are getting crazy in this part of the world just for simple food. And for sure, this cannot be understood. Remember in the beginning what I said. Basque people divided in two nations, but still in the Europe. Kurdish issue is not like that. Divided in four nations, and more than one region: Caucasia, Middle East, even Mediterranean, and South Europe. One of the major dynamic in post-World Wars was the Cold War, because uh, all the world, but especially in the Europe, from Turkey to Spain and UK, Cold War has a major role. Not only Cold War, let's say the socialist movements affect to nations, the minorities, vulnerable people, like Kurdish struggle in Turkey, in other countries, and Basque struggle in Spain, even ERA in the UK, uh, got support from the East, like socialist pact, communist pact, in the Cold War. So what happens after Cold War? Let's skip the Cold War era because it's we need too much detail for it. What happened in the Cold War era? One of the things I'm curious about. These movements, Basque movement in Spain, ERA in the UK, and the Kurdish movement in Turkey, got weakened because they lost one of the major supporters. The communist world, the East, collapsed, and it's replaced with the European Union. In Turkey, for example, the Kurds are asking, pleading European Union to take role, more initiative in solving the Kurdish issue in Turkey. But on the other hand, Turkish government did totally opposite. Ask EU to stay away from this issue. It's like domestic issue. Please don't enter or something like that. But as far as I see, it's opposite in the Spain. It was Spanish government who ask European Union take initiative to solve Basque issue. But I'm curious about approach of the Basque opinion, public opinion of Basque people towards European Union in solving the issue. What do you think about it? If you compare with Kurdish issue and the Basque, what is role of European Union?
It's very interesting. Mm, I will try to make two separate ideas. The issue within Marxism-Leninism in Cold War and the European Union issue. First one, it's true that in nowadays is the anniversary of the Bandung conference that made the idea of the third world. Third world is not a capitalist or economic or that issue. That was idea about first world was the United States liberal democracy world. Second world was the socialist movements, USSR, and that idea. And the third world was the non-aligned movement of nations. But with the time to time, all that nations went on one or another side. So it might be said that the world was divided by East and West. And in subnational movements, not state movements, they tried to get some influence because the Spanish War in 1936 1939 had the end of a fascist state with Franco as a head of state, and after the Second World War the world presumed that it was more important the stability of state of Spain than forcing an invasion and getting democracy inside. But they forget one important thing. This thing is that after the Spanish Civil War, the Republic dismissed, was dissolved in exile. No democracy was in exile. So the only capability to be structured was the Basque government in exile. Even the Catalonians had dissolved their own self-government. So, if there is no capability of Spanish Republicans to get unite and get one structured government in a world that the East has power to make possible an alternative, so the pragmatism, heavy and ugly pragmatism of United States, United Kingdom, looked at Spain, looked at there is no opportunity of a democratic alternative to Franco. They are not united, so Spain, as a look of some people, was unable to have a Soviet government. In those cases, a smaller look was that the Basques were not comfortable with the situation because they knew that there were dreams. You have dreams. Well, probably you may have the dream of a united republic or kingdom of Kurdistan within the part of Turkey, Syria, Iran, tomorrow morning. But it's possible to meet it done. Probably no, probably not tomorrow morning. But they wanted in the 1950s, they wanted a independent country, a free world, peace in. But they have no alternative. Franco in government and the Basque National Party trying to unite the Basques in exile. But they had no possibility to get out Franco. So some young people were inspired by the ideas of Marxist-Leninism, that was more possible to get an independent Basque country than another ideas. The problem is it was terrorism, making war to Franco, making war to Spain, giving bodies into the table, but with Franco out and trying to get some kind of democracy, they continued with the struggle within democracy. So that was a very important problem for them and for all of us, because Spaniards, after the constitution, they thought, oh, we have gone too far with the Basques, we have given them too much. So if they have terrorism, haven't ended with the devolution of powers, so we have to give them back to the Middle Ages, we have to give them soft power to destroy ETA, and within ETA, probably it happens with the PKK, with the idea of some that, oh, they have PKK, so all Kurds are PKK. They thought in Spain, all Basques are ETA. So we have to destroy not only terrorism, nationalism too. The problem is European Union. European Union is not going to solve the problem, and is not going to give us a rice boat by helicopter to give the solution going under the base of Spain to... No, it's not to approve a destroy of Basque Country. That is very important, because some people want to go forward in some ideas. So, if you want peace, European Union will keep peace, as the peace plan in Northern Ireland. Will give money, will give supplies, will give people to get programs in favor of peace. Will press not going forward to Spain or France. Will try to get under some limits, but saying Spain is an internal problem. You have to solve democratically, but inside your country. Is that level what happens, at least in Europe? Its problems are very important, more important for Europe, not talking about Ukraine, Georgia, that are outside formally Europe, but inside there is borders in East Europe, very difficult borders, because there are Hungarians in Romania. And what does Viktor Orban support independent movements inside Romania? That is more difficult than what happens with Basques and Spain, and probably the European Commission has looks more certain about what happens there with those countries than if someday Turkey comes inside Europe. Who knows what happens, but previous of that, Turkey has to commit the Copenhagen the points of the compliance about Copenhagen points to get in, and be with the article number 2 with the document of functioning of the European Union. So with those issues, it have to incorporate a view that partially will solve the problem, and probably is one of the ideas that separated the actual government of Turkey with the joining to European Union, because it's hard to make possible some of the requests of being member of the European Union, probably. But
Yeah, actually, yeah.
the idea of left Marxist Leninism, socialism is not. They are not gone. They are transformed. They are in another laboratory. They are with another um, way of presenting themselves. They lost East Europe, they lost some regimes, but they are in Venezuela. They are formally in North Korea.
Mhm.
It is said that China is socialist, but at least is socialist in administration. They are more capitalist. If you join three people, some are not in power. If you put in the same room Trump, Putin, and Xi Jinping, the more far right people in all senses will be Xi Jinping. But formally, he is communist.
Yeah, that's interesting. Uh, you have a point on that democracy. In Turkey, this is what people are discussing. Uh, is Kurdish question will be solved if we have real democracy in Turkey or not? Some people say yes. Some people say no. It's a problem of security, national security. It can be solved in the militarist way, like in Sri Lanka. But fortunately, most of people still think all we need is democracy, and democracy can solve the Kurdish issue. Uh, when we talk about Kurdish and Basque issues, comparing two issues, we cannot miss the today. Today marks the Armenian genocide. For some people, it's Armenian genocide, but for most of people in Turkey, it's not a genocide. It's just exile. Putting this discussions aside, I am one of those who think democracy can solve the problem of minority. This issues, Armenian issue, Kurdish issue, Greek issue in Turkey, and now we have refugee issue, are all about democracy and freedom. More we are getting closer to European Union and modern countries, modern democracies, less we have this kind of problems. More we are getting closer to solving the issues. Regarding Marxism and Leninism, it's interesting because ERA and ETA and this kind of separatist, or you can call them nationalist, sub-nationalist movements, whatever you call them, kind of left Marxism and Leninism. They're compared to Cold War era. They are less communist and Marxist-Leninist, or this is what they are showing us in post-Cold War era. But this is not the case in Kurdish issue. Uh, Kurdish militants, Kurdish separatists still are very strict on the Marxism and Leninism, like what we are seeing in northern Syria right now. It's totally weird, totally bizarre, because the communist Kurds, well, they don't call themselves communists, but let's call them in this way, in alliance with the capitalist United States against ISIS. The world is changing in the post Cold War era, and it's another layer in Kurdish issue. When we talk about impact of the European Union, we have to talk shutting down of political wing of this armed organizations, subnational organizations, like in Spain. ETA dissolved themselves. They declared ceasefires and they create political wings like Batasuna, but it was shut down. This happens many times in Turkey. Many Kurdish civilian political parties have been shut down for being in relationship with the armed organizations. And in that case, I can say, let me talk about Turkey now. This shutting down the political parties didn't serve in favor of solving the problems in a civilian way, in the peaceful way. Contrary, it helped the conflict became more intense, more bloody, and caused more life. And jailing the politicians uh, didn't help to be problem to be solved. Uh, right now in Turkey we have a party. Some people call it Kurdish Party, HDP. I wouldn't call them Kurdish Party because it's like party of minorities. That would be better. Yeah, the voters are mostly like significantly are Kurdish, but it's not only Kurdish party. It is party of national minorities. In Spain also you have one party which is Basque party, and they are quite strong actually. Let me remember the name. Sortu. Sortu. Even it was not registered by the Spanish government in the first, but then it was registered, and in the 2012, correct me if I'm wrong, they got 24% of the votes, and in 2016 they got 22% of the votes, which means uh, 15 seats in the parliament. So it's quite interesting and charming for researchers like me. What does it mean? What does it mean for the Basque people? Sortu is, which is not secret. It has ties with the ETA, which is not effective now. Uh, but still, it's Basque nationalist and socialist in the same time. What they want independence for the Basque people. Are Basque people supporting them still? Because they have a significant number of the votes and seats. What does number tell us in Spain?
Sortu is true, is Batasuna. They got illegalized.
Mhm.
It must be said that the leader of Batasuna, that is the leader of Sortu, they are called now Euskal Herria Bildu, that is Arnaldo Tegui Mondragon. The leader, Arnaldo Tegui, in the days 20 years ago, that the Basque Parliament wanted to claim European Union recast for the illegalization party, the political party law that illegalized them. They voted against the Basque Parliament, going to European Court against the law that wanted to illegalize them. So they have their own agenda. They have their own agenda even long time ago, because they wanted the struggle to make them the sultan over the sultan. They to be the people in rule. Because you said the Basque National Party is the first and more important party in the country, in Basque Country. Founded in 1895, it's 127 year of anniversary. Founded by Sabino Arana in Bilbao, and making possible some like this, our flag, national flag, the anthem written by Sabino Arana, and many other things. And in those days of Cold War, they thought that making all a part of Sabino Arana and Basque National Party was the good way of independence. They tried with the struggle in ETA, they tried with Marxism-Leninism, but convinced in it, they now say, one of their parliament leaders of this group says, we need the people for one election to get power, and after that we will build socialism. They are socialist. They are still in the way of the future, but they have the common sense that what they wanted, in the 70s, they wanted to talk ETA to the proper force. They thought the democracy in Spain was the Spanish army, so they wanted to talk with them for the possibility of the people in the jail to get out of the jail and those things that are still inside, because there are 200 people in Spanish jails being well, they suffer the consequences of their terrorism because they kill people. The penal code goes against them and they are in jail, but not by ethical consequences, because they are not ethically convinced they were wrong. They think opportunity was gone. They had no opportunity in the context of European Union, of the Western countries, within the September 11 in 2001, with the March 11 in 2004 in Madrid. With those acts, people wouldn't understand the ongoing terrorism in Basque Country. So they tried to restructure their movements into a political movement. But Spain, Basque, in this moment, with no people watching and taking notes, Basque National Party in 2011 thought that was better, the less worst. So continuing the illegalization was worse than having them out and broke, because if 2011 passed with an illegalized Batasuna, they were broke in money and capability. So in those elections, municipal and autonomic elections, was a possibility, because Zapatero government was very weak. So the appeal to the constitutional court in Spain to know if the that electoral mark was possible or not possible to be legalized. After the court, Basque National Party wanted their in. They would not recognize that. They think, oh, the Spanish recognize the democracy, and they went to the idea that illegalizing people is not good in Europe. No, it's more important what is made on the roots, not seen by the people, trying to force Zapatero and the Constitutional Court to get them in. But after that, on those decades before the after the legalization, they tried to destroy Basque National Party. It's their own common goal. They tried to get that, to get power, to talk with the Spanish government, to try to support Pedro Sanchez, and not to get Vox and Popular Party in government again. So they may be seen as very Spanish. They speak talking about independence, but they want to make difference in the election in Spanish government. They have the need to feel important. To feel important within the Spanish government, Spanish Basque institutions, and try to rule. But they now say, oh, Basque model. What model? AK-47 model. Terrorism is their model. The building of Basque Nation was made of Basque National Party in Sahel, in institutions, so they went against that. But now they present themselves to get power. Who knows what the Basque people will do? But they are, as I say, still are socialist. So that's the way they unite with Podemos. We can to support them. And Pablo Iglesias, the former leader in Barcelona, told that they need Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya to support Yolanda Díaz, their candidate for next general elections, and expect sortu Euskal Herria Bildu to support Yolanda Díaz as next president of Spain. What looks very strange as a movement that claims for independence of Basque Country. It's curious. It's what in Marxism-Leninism is called primary and secondary contradiction. That talks, if I can explain shortly, the secondary contradiction is what the bourgeoisie and the proletariat of one country, not state, with a national problem, that they can join to try to solve that. So proletariat is supposed in Marxism-Leninism to go against them, against all, against the capitalism, against. But in those cases, is possible to make a joint venture to get national problem solved. But that secondary contradiction is engaged to primary contradiction. That is the proletariat of the world unite. So that involves that primary contradictions support the state of things as they are. Primary contradiction, for example, in Spain, will support an structure of Spain as it is nowadays. So, secondary contradiction engaged with the first contradiction, the primary, would be the support of Basque left independentists to the Spanish left forces to get a left country in Spain instead of getting an independence Basque country. And it happens in another cases. It's a classic of Marxism-Leninism.
Yeah, that's very interesting. For me, the most interesting part was the last part. You were telling me what the left-wing party, Spanish left. One of the things I'm very curious about the approach of the Spanish left-wing parties towards the Basque independence, idea of independence.
Yes,
Can
they formally told in the 70s there are manifestations, protests in streets with you can see people hanging Basque self-determination by Socialist Party. But when they got power in Spain, they forget obviously those things because in the best way those people are committed with the Spanish view. The state of Spain is unique for left to right. One Catalan called Pla said, "What is more similar of a Spanish right people is a Spanish left people in the national view of what is Spain." Those peoples of Pablo Iglesias say, yes, we recognize the self-determination of Basque Country, but to get you decide by yourself, being Spanish, by your option. You have to decide if you want to be Spanish or not, but in the idea that you will choose to be Spanish to get with them and help them to get left Spain. So it's a conductist referendum, not it's some like what happens in South Ossetia. In South Ossetia, they say, "Oh, we will give opportunity to get a referendum of people, but for what? For being Russians. Russians is the best way of life. Oh, what fantastic! If you want to make a referendum in South Ossetia, you have to make a plural of choices. You have to make the possibility of making a South Ossetia Republic, or making a joint republic with South Ossetia and North Ossetia called Republic of All Ossetians. Of if you want the opportunity, it's possible to they want to be Georgians, but a plural of opportunities. In the main mind of those left Spaniards, there is one option. They would like to put big, very big. Oh, Basques want to be Spaniards. Oh, they like to be Spaniards. Another type of Spaniards, not centralist, not unitary, not uniform, but Spaniards. Good. And very little, oh, it may be possible, there is the possibility of independence. But they will not choose this because they will go to the trash of history, they will lose their economy, they will. Which is curious because those arguments are taken by the Spanish right parties. They say the same. Basques, if they are independent, they are going to lose everything, they are going to destroy their way of life. What happened some kind in Scotland? Scotland, Labour and Conservative people said the same. Scotland will get out of European Union, laughing because they got out European Union the year before, the year after. They got in 2014 the independence referendum, and in 2016 they got out the European Union. Lying, but they said, oh, the best way to get a stronger Scotland is being inside the United Kingdom. But with the oil in the North Sea, you can see there's 18 refinery within the United Kingdom oil. 17 are in England. Only one is in Scotland. So it's not the idea of independentism or not independentism. It's about the respect, the agreements, reaching agreements and respecting it, because only one day of oil supplies in Scotland economy could erase all debts. All debts of Scotland would be erased with one day of oil supplies in Scotland economy. The idea, I got the point what said about democracy and the solving of national problems. It's not. It may people think about voting and formal conception of democracy is important. No, not only the surface. It's important what is inside. The complement of the agreements, because you may get an agreement, but if it's not implied, if the part of one part at least doesn't commit to put in value and in real what is agreed, the problem is very important, and it happens in Basque Country. We have an statute of autonomy, a little constitution to get our rule of law, but part of what is agreed in 1979 isn't in vigor, isn't now um, it has to be negotiated with the Spanish government. It's curious because Basque National Party goes to the Congress, to the Parliament of Spain, and has to um, get those moments of weakness of the Spanish government to um, get a new type of agreement about okay, we will support your law or your whatever they need, and you have to fulfill this what was signed in 1979 in this line and this and this and this. This is the problem. The problem is the complement of the agreement, because one thing is democracy in big and another is going underline, and the problem is having the capability of getting those ideas, because New Caledonia, Nuame agreements 1988, they had the opportunity of making 3 referendum of independence. They are done, all are making, so they choose the capability of being France. They have sent, they told in New Caledonia, close to Australia, they are French. Good, but the capability they have to make possible the agreements is the important issue. The important issue is the way from the Nuema agreements in 40 years to get the possibility of being implemented. Because if you think it's possible that we have an agreement, we put in the in a good place to be seen, but we do another thing. In probably there are laws protecting culture, protecting languages in Turkey. Probably there are incorporated some legal issues because the way in 18, 19, 20th century has given some matter in the real way of life is not fulfilled. They have illegalized parties in Turkey. They have things made things unbelievable in the letter of the law. So one thing is what is publicly published, and one thing is what happens in real.
Yeah, you have a point. I can say democracy is important to solve this kind of issues in the countries, especially in Europe. But the context of agreement, context of the democracy, the meaning of democracy is important as well, like you say. And in case of Turkey, yeah, they shut down number of parties, and none of this shutting down served democracy. None of shutting down the political parties didn't serve to military conflict to be solved.
It's curious because there was a coup in 1981 in Spain, and some people said that they have made the coup because it exists, and because you are requesting too much to Basque nationalism. Because you are requesting too much, people in Spain have given a coup, so you have to slow your petitions. And in Turkey, there was some kind of coup in a few years ago, and for sure there are many things to be explained in that supposed coup.
Yeah, we call it coup attempt. And yeah, it start unlike Spain, it start and conflict. It's not caused by the conflict, but it start the conflict. All right.
It's curious when they say to you, "Oh, this happens because you are bad people. If you were good people, this couldn't exist."
Yeah, like I said, this is result of the Kurdish issue. Just a couple of months, even years before this coup attempt, there was a big military conflict in east of Turkey. It's like totally war, like civil war. All right, it was very intensive, and this coup, this is what they say, is result of this bad management of the military resource. Is what they say. Personally, I don't buy this. I don't believe this. The reason behind this coup attempt are different, and we need to talk maybe in separate times. But this is what they show us. This is what they tell us in the military conflict. Because this type of conflict is something new in 1 century Kurdish issue. In the beginning, I told you the Kurdish issue didn't start automatically after French Revolution, but it has deeper roots, even to 15th century. And this coup, like they say, is a result of this military conflict that we are not used of, we are not experienced in, and we military resources are not managed very well. It's it's how they try to convince people. But there is something for sure from my side, in my opinion. Yeah, Kurdish issue. Unless you solve the Kurdish issue in Turkey, uh, military and political conflicts will go on. Next year, we will have an election in Turkey, and from now, even from before, all the parties start to convince Kurds to vote for them. All right, it's because Kurdish are minority. We call them minority, but in official, it's not. They are not minority, and they are too big to be minority. In 85 million population of Turkey, Kurds are around 30, 35 million, even more. All right. So, yeah, we call them minority, but they're actually half of the nation, half of the people living in this country, and they are important. You need their vote to be successful in the election. In each election, right, left, all parties ask Kurds to vote for them. Not only left, even though like Spanish left towards Basque people, Turkish left also. They are trying to be friend of the Kurds. Like they are the biggest ally of Kurds. Let's be honest. But not only left, but also right-wing parties are also asking Kurds to vote for them. So in each election and each stage of the history, Kurds are being the key actor in the elections, local and the general legislative elections, even presidential elections, but also the military conflicts. In every conflict, Turkish army involved, you may heard something about Kurds in Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict, in Ukrainian conflict. Somehow, the Turkish newspaper are like, "Hey, Kurds are sending troops to fight against Turkey." It's. I mean, I'm not taking this thing serious, but it's a result of mindset. A mindset. It's not out of blue. There is a tradition in Turkey which engaged to the Kurds. And I actually want to talk a little bit more about cultural rights rather than politics. In Basque Country, I know that you have rights, political and cultural rights. You can educate in your own language. You can learn and you can teach Basque language, and which is not the case in Turkey until now so far. Uh, so you have kind of freedom in Turkey. We're still talking about how we can get this stage, this level. There are 2 points I have. After the military conflict, military struggle dissolved itself during the ceasefire, gaining the civil and the cultural rights are boosting. has been boosted in Spain. This is what I'm saying, and it happened in Turkey after 2015, the military conflict, the urban conflict. It's fair to say that the Kurds have relatively more rights than before. I mean, still the Kurdish language is not recognized as a language. I mean, not official language. It's not recognized as a language, but you can find street signs in Kurdish in certain areas. But my humble experience in the North Africa and Middle East, there is a rising Turkish power in the region, in the Middle East, North Africa, and some part of Europe, even like let's say in the globally, the soft power. More people are watching Turkish movies. More people are visiting Turkey. More people are um, trying to be a tourist in Turkey. They are being more curious about Turkey. More people are learning Turkish language, and it's called soft power, cultural power. And Kurds, I can say, negatively impacted by this soft power. Even though they are free, I mean, it's fair to say relatively there is more freedom than before when it comes to Kurdish language. But the power of Turkish language is squeezing the Kurdish language. More Kurdish youth on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, even though they post something about Kurdish culture, Kurdish weddings, or this kind of things, they use even the song or dance or whatever is Kurdish. The outfit, everything is Kurdish, but the headline is written in the Turkish language. So even though Kurds are more freedom, but Turkish language has more soft power. It gains more power, and not only the region around Turkey, like other countries, also inside Turkey, Turkish language and Turkish culture became more popular. It's something like let's talk about 20 years ago. It was not the case. So in that point, I'm curious about Basque cultural rights. Yes, you can teach your language. You can learn your language. You have administrative autonomy, political autonomy, cultural autonomy. But Spain and Spanish language, Spanish culture is one of the most popular one in the world. Uh, what's the reaction of the Basque people towards rise of this Spanish culture? Less people speak Basque language, or more people speak Basque language, and Basque people stick on their culture. How it works, how it looks like in Basque country now.
It's true. In the year of 1980 was the first post-Frankism Basque government in Basque Country. The Basque language was almost killed in Basque Country, and in those 42 years, there are young people, learned in Basque language that knows Basque. But it's true that is more people knowing Basque than using Basque. It's Spanish and French. We have the real good opportunity of having two of the most spoken languages from north and south of our country. Mm, What, quite curious. But we have the tools to make this different. But there are three areas: the Basque Autonomy Community, the Community of Navarre, and the French Basque Country. In the Basque community, we have the tools, but the people still speak much Spanish. But more on the oldest people than the youngest people. Youngest people use more than the others the language, more in some places than others. The area of Bilbao is less Basque speaking than the area of San Sebastian of Donosti, for example. But in Navarre we have three different areas. It is called in ancient times Naparheit, that in the north They can be teach in Basque, a third in the north. There is a zone in the middle that is bilingual, and a zone in the south that is only Spanish. So you can not teach in Basque in the zone of the south. So there are three different zones. That it's not very democratic apparently, but it's legal. And in the French Basque Country, it's more cultural for tourism. There are it's curious because there are more Basque flags in French Basque Country than in the Basque Autonomy Community, but it's not inside. It's not inside the body politically or culturally. You have to make this difference because probably you have heard about the autonomist proposal to the Sahara from Morocco. It is not an inside proposal. It is a copy of Spanish communities. They propose an autonomy because the autonomies exist in Spain, and they say, "Oh, what we can choose, oh, this." But the communities in Spain are to resolve a problem that they had because Basque and Catalans wanted autonomy, but the others not. The others had no history of asking autonomy. In Italy, they have several problems with Sardinia, Veneto, but other regions, Emilia-Romagna, who wanted autonomy in Emilia-Romagna. So they have several institutes for one to another. But Spanish has no previous culture of autonomy, so they have views on another countries to make the constitution. They have the 1978 constitution within the look of the constitution of Italy, France, and Germany after 1945, after the Second World War. But there is a problem because they got the reach to reach the point of giving the constitution in Italy, France, and Germany because they have the struggle in the Second World War, they have syndicates, political parties, movements, but those given to Spain without the root of the experience that gave to the point is a bad thing because you get the product without the experience to get that point. It's like in food. In food, what is I don't know what is the word. What is Burger King, McDonald's is a type of restaurant.
Fast food.
Not the what you get the license to a product and you put here, there, another like
Franchise.
franchise. Yes, franchise. Democracy, autonomy may be a franchise if you don't get the roots to get it proper. So if we can go to Kurdish land to put inside the experience of Basque community autonomy, the language, the culture, all, but it could be as a franchise, a Basque franchise with Kurdish appearance. It's better trying to go to the local area and trying to improve root politics to try to teach to learn to speak. It's better speak than to teach because the using is more important than the knowing. So we have different scenarios different problems in the three different areas, but it was because the for example, in the 19th century, in Spain, there was no public teach. The teach was by the church and some kind of private schools. But in the Basque Country, the Biscay territorial power had the capability of supervising municipalities, and inside the municipalities, the schools were public. So they were capable to teach, not to teach in Basque, but to teach at least in Spanish, and they were more capable to be in the world than Spaniards. At the end of this century, 19th century, in Spain, they got the teach public movement. Ginés de los Ríos, some people who were Republicans, leftists, but that movement was unable to Basque Country because there was no need. We have public, and that public teach was important to the future and the idea of now. In some late Frankism was called Icastola, some clandestine teach of Basques. What I mean? I mean there are roots, circumstances that make possible the form of one way to learn, teach, and speak, but inside those benefits, then there are problems like people wanting to sing last Rosalia song or last reggaeton. Yes, reggaeton is everywhere but in Spanish it's difficult. Is the soft power of culture, and it happens everywhere. So you have to make many efforts to give some sexy appeals to Basque language, to the use some apps in the mobile to try them use and those things when they go to the football matches, to try to bring them tools to speak to the players in Basque, for example, or to say things it's sure it's not only in Basque Country, it's global.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I heard the same thing, almost same thing from an Irish friend. He told me something interesting. English speaker Irish families. English speaker Irish families. Even though they are super nationalist Irish people, the families, but they prefer to speak English in the house between the family members because, like you say, English is more sexy and it helps you to get more job opportunity, professional opportunity, and yeah. But the most interesting point is that even though they speak English, they don't speak their language as a first language. They are still super Irish nationalists. I think this is what we are seeing in Kurdish community right now. They speak Turkish more and more day by day, but on other hand, they keep their language, and they already kept for a long time, even though they still don't have chance of educating Kurdish language, their language. They cannot write the newspapers, for example, the books, songs, these kind of things. They already keep their language. But even though more people speak Turkish language more than Kurdish, still they are Kurdish. Still they keep being nationalists. I think this is the case in Basque community. Yeah, even
Yes,
though they speak Spanish, but they still Basque. They feel Basque nationalists.
yes, it's true. Catalans are otherwise because they think there is no possible of Catalan nationalism outside the Catalan language. What
Mhm.
is more or like what happens in the first century with those rare Jewish people that were the first Christians,
Mhm.
because the cut of those little things on this special area of men that they do the Jewish in the early young ages. Um, they thought Paul, Peter, thought they that was not a good thing to proselytism in Greek area. So they thought for new Christianity was better uh, integrating integrating those and giving up those practice of cutting those. And in Basque new nationalism, at least in 20th century, you can be Basque in the language you want. The important thing is feeling, respecting, and fulfilling the self-government, self-autonomy, and the idea of you are in a different nation, a different culture, you have the opportunity of being in another culture in this nation, but you can be Basque nationalist in Spanish language.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I'm seeing in Kurdish community, and I heard in Irish community. Now you tell me the you have the same thing in Basque community. So it's a very charming topic to research about. But this is my last question, if you don't mind. It's just very quick question. Do you think the Basque community, Basque nation, are satisfied about their rights in Spain, the cultural and political rights, autonomy they have? Are they satisfied, or what do you think?
I think it's better if it's possible to get better, but in the world we have, in the way we have, they are properly good thinking about we got, but in those areas, because Basque community, Navarre and French Basque Country.
Mhm.
In the French Basque Country, there were very difficulties about getting autonomy, and the agricultural chamber was made, and after that, in French Basque Country, you have problems within the coast and the inside country. Because the coast is more touristical and the inside is more agricultural, and to make them join into a common goal was very difficult, and there is some kind of autonomous community with a small money to develop some politics. In the south, of course, there are many numbers to make a good health. The best health in the state of Spain is in the Basque communities. The best educational levels are in the Basque communities, in Basque Country and Navarre. A few days ago, appears that in the at the end of the basic education at the 18 years, here you have to pass a proof, an exam, and Basques got 7.2 as media in the number, and the most that approves that exam. So we are in top in education, in health, in social services. It is 40% the cost of social services that are in Basque Country. In Spain, the state of Spain, 40% of what is waste in social services in Spain is waste Basque Country, and we are 4% in population and 6% in GPD of the state of Spain. So we are strong in wasting money in taking care of people, and that is watched by the people, so they know that is a link between we have in the administration, we have in self-government, and the capability of getting those goods. So I think for at least at this moment they are in good condition, because we have seen what happened in Catalonia, the process, the sinking of the process, because they talked too much and they did nothing. They did nothing. They wanted to get independence being recognized, not being worked. They wanted the people of other countries say, oh, they are right. Those people have the right thing and the right position. They are good people, so we recognize them. No, people, geopolitics, and all. You have to have the power to implement your position. You have not to be good. You have to be the one good who is not with the reason, with the power to protect the reason. So, Catalans saved money, made protests, gave some statements, but in the hour to go forward, to say we want independence and we will get independence, so you have to control territory, you have to go to the borders and protect the borders, you have to withdraw the old powers of state outside the country, you have to control the port, the airport, you have to control the police states, the places of the Spanish police. Never was thought to be done. They never wanted to realize that those points that make you an independent state to be recognized, they didn't want none of those points. So, former president went to Waterloo, some people went to Scotland, to exile, and they are now destroyed, and many firms have gone to other parts of Spain. And watching that model, Basques have said, oh, that's not for us. So have moved for a non-independentism, because what they want is non-dependentism. Non-dependence better than independence.
Mm.
It's what I think, or at least is what in what the number says in the prospection. It's said that independence has gone down for almost 50 a few years ago to one third of independentism. So I think they are quite satisfied with the actual model.
Okay. In the same time, the Kurds have experience of independence referendum, but not in Turkey, in Iraq. They held a referendum for independence, and like if I'm not mistaken, it's around 90% of Kurds vote for the in favor of independence. But this independence never came to action. When it's, again, like I said in the beginning, Kurdish issue in the Middle East as the Basque issue in the Europe. So in Middle East, when you are about to declare an independence against the regional powers like Iran and Turkey or Saudi Arabia, you have to be ready for the war. And this is what happened. The Kurds declared independence, let's say, and then Iran, from the, I mean, even though Iran is the eastern neighbor of the Kurds, they armed the Shia militia in the west. So they captured the traditional Kurdish cities, Kirkuk and Mosul. So they got the control. And Kurdish independence, like you say, the leader of this part of the like, Iraqi Kurdistan, let's say, uh, like Catalans, they didn't want to prepare the path for the independence, the real independence, but they wanted to be independence just for being recognized, right? So it's case of Catalans. It's very similar to case of Catalans. I can say I agree with you on this point.
And Jalal Talabani was head of state of Iraq.
I am not sure. No, I think he was passed away in this period. I'm not sure, honestly.
Not now. I mean in the past. In the past,
In
he
this
was
period,
he was.
was he the president? Again, I'm
I
not
mean
sure.
that the head of state of Iraq
Was Kurdish?
in the
Yeah,
proposal has to be a Kurd.
Kurdish. Yeah, that's true. That's very interesting point. But most of the presidents who are Kurds are close to Iran, so they are like ally of Iran.
Mm.
But on the contrary, the Kurdish part, Kurdish autonomy, the north, are relatively more nationalist, and they are closer to Turkey than they are to Iran. But yeah, it's yeah, you're right. You have point. It's interesting point.
It's more
The
like the in Lebanon to have one confession in the speaker. The prime minister is. I think the speaker has to be Sunni. The prime minister has to be Shia,
still
and
has to
the president of state has to be Christian.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is the same system they have in Iraq. To me, it's not working well, neither in Lebanon nor in Iraq. It causes more problems.
It doesn't work because the agreement in Lebanon was made in one moment when demographics were one way and demographics has gone another way. So the repart of powers in Lebanon now doesn't is not responding the real Lebanon. And
Yeah,
probably happens the same in Iraq.
yeah. Even though it's early to say it's not like that in Iraq, but it's fair to say that it will share the same fate with Lebanon. So this system is not working well for sure, and each season of election they have a problem in Iraq because it's not only dynamic of the nation, it's also dynamic of the regions. Kurds has to decide who will be the president, and they struggle, they fight to each other whose candidate will be president, and then if they are able to manage to select the candidate, then they have to convince rest of Iraq to accept this candidate. And once this candidate came to power, he has to convince the neighboring countries like Iran and Turkey, major countries, like giant neighbors of Iraq, and U.S. as well, that he is a suitable candidate for being president. And the problems start from now on. And this just we are just talking about being president, office of president. There is prime ministry, governors, and member of parliaments, speaker of parliaments, each of them are causing more problem. So probably it will not work well in Iraq, and some analysts, some of my friends who are researcher in the Middle East researchers are predicting that even not de jure but de jure, but de facto, Iraq will be dissolved. Will be like more countries, like confederation. This is what we have in Iraq right now, actually. But it will be more confederated system.
Yes, it's possible because Iraq itself was invented 100 years ago, so it's really a young country. So we can conclude some kind this way. It was very interesting in commenting these issues. If you want to say a closing thing.
Yeah, in a nutshell, I can say that, like I said, Basque and Kurdish issues are very charming issues, very charming topics for me as a researcher, not only as an individual from this part of the world, but as a political analyst and researcher. It's really interesting to compare two issues to each other. There are similarities, there are differences, and there are some coincidences. Like while the Spain is in the most west of the Europe, Turkey is the most east of the Europe, and they have similar minority issues. And Basque and Kurds have similarities, even though they are totally different culture, totally different language, and very different physically and culturally. They somehow support each other. They manage to support each other in the not only in political terms but also in cultural terms. Like I know the Basques celebrate Kurdish New Year, Nowruz, and the Kurds celebrate Basque celebrations. And I know some Kurds who lives in the Basque Country, and they try to learn Basque languages. So there is a not only political but also cultural relationship between two nations. And yeah, like you say, it was very interesting and fruitful to talk about this topic. Thank you.
Good. So thank you for the people reaching this point, and thank you to you, and
Yeah.
see you another time.